here looking at that situation. We're going to have a special guest in the studio. It's been with us before. A somewhat different subject. We have Tomer Al-Doubi back now, founder and the CEO of Fighting Online Anti-Semitism, this organization you've started. Tomer, thanks for being back with us. Let's start with that. I mean, tell us about your work with Fighting Online Anti-Semitism. What led you into this, essentially?
So actually, the personal family story led me. My grandmother, she's a Holocaust survivor. She's still alive. She's 94 years old.
Great.
And she's very proud of our job in fighting on anti-Semitism.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so she was a great inspiration for you.
Yes, for sure.
Up close, personal, in your life, you know.
Yes, I was intrigued. I was very curious to learn more about the Holocaust since I was, I think, 15, 16 years old. And yes, and now I tell her all the time about the online sphere. Of course, she does not use any TikTok or Facebook.
Okay, fair enough.
But she studies for my side.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about as a teenager starting to get into this with a grandmother who is a survivor, and we're talking about social media. So much, kids in focus. I think in this, at least in my mind. And what age? How young were you when you started to truly understand or be taught about or told about what your grandmother went through? Do you recall? When it started for you?
I think it was about 15, 16 years ago. She did not speak a lot about the Holocaust, and I think I was the only one in the family that really wanted to know more.
Wow.
And my mother and her sister and the entire family did not speak about it a lot. And I started to ask questions. When I was young, of course, there were a few questions, but by age and today we can speak about it more openly and more freely. And she remembers a lot, even though she's 94 or 4 years old. Yeah, she remembers the bad experiment and the bad experience she had. And she was the only one, and her brother, they were the only one to survive. So,
to bring back to this sort of online platform, I was reading something that said in 2022, Facebook, removed the greatest amount of anti-Semitic content online. What are you seeing online broadly? What's happening out there? How bad is it? Are we winning or losing this fight?
So that's a good question. Fighting on Anti-Semitism is an Israeli-based NGO. We focus on monitoring anti-Semitism online. Last year we have trained about 200 volunteers that monitor and report content online on 10 different platforms. And because we monitor in different platforms, we can compare between the platforms. So for example, we have seen that last year Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram together, they removed the most content, and there was also an increase of removing by those platforms. So we can be optimistic when we talk about this platform, and also TikTok, which removed another great amount of content.
So they're working on it. I mean, these platforms, it's an important mission for them to not allow this stuff. How rampant is it? I mean, are we talking about floods of it nonstop coming through? Seriously anti-Semitic things? Is it neo-Nazis? Is it coming from the left, the right? Well, how do you characterize anti-Semitism online?
That's a good question. We follow the IHRA definition, which is an international definition for anti-Semitism online. This definition is not necessarily adopted by the platforms. The platforms they have different community standards for anti-Semitism and hate speech. We collaborate with other platforms, including Telegram and Spotify and LinkedIn, but yet more platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and others, they collaborate with us and they remove content. I must tell that I'm more worried than platforms like Telegram, Gab, and other places that we are not there yet, because eventually I believe that the next terror attack, the next anti-Semitic attack against Jews will start online.
Wow. I mean, I'd argue most of us, kind of live with our heads in the sand when it comes to this. Maybe we're looking at our own feeds. Maybe we're not, even that immersed in it. Would we be horrified, essentially, to see what you're seeing? And to see what your volunteers are viewing? Is this the type of stuff that's jaw-dropping to see in 2023?
Yes, for sure. The photos and the images we see, some of them are exactly like we have seen 100 years ago, but of course it was not online, it was offline with posters and movies in the cinema. It's quite the same today, but of course the spread and the people, and especially the young adults and the children that are exposed to this content, of course there is a majority of people that use the platforms, and that's a big concern.
This is an expanding world as well, new platforms emerging all the time. There's a lot to keep up with. Obviously, you're in the front of an important fight, fighting online anti-Semitism as it is. Tomer Al-Doubi, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.